A Revolutionary Old Idea, hosted by Mark Gardner and Steve Steich.
Hi, welcome to A Revolutionary Old Idea. It's a podcast series about the business of creativity and maybe creativity in business. Our series guests represent a broad spectrum of creative endeavors. I'm Mark Gardner, a former creative director, a journalist, and a screenwriter. My co-host is Steve Steich, a comedic television writer, musician, playwright, and director.
Thank you. And what we like to do here is celebrate the creative work of our guests and using the business of their creativity as a lens into culture, history, maybe even politics, and who knows what else.
Today, our guest is H. Richard Green. He's renowned not only for his work as an actor on stage and on screen, but also as a theatrical director and a professor at UCLA.
And he's also probably way too modest to tell you that he's one of the top and most respected acting coaches in Hollywood. He's worked with some very famous performers. So, Richard, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, Richard, I have heard that success as an actor, whether on stage or on screen, usually comes very quickly and easily to people who just decide that that's a thing that they should try. But what about you?
Who are you listening to? That's terrible. Terrible.
Well, I just thought, are you usually working at a car wash and you're just plucked out of the line for fame? But tell us about your start.
I came up through educational theater, various universities, University of Miami, Florida Atlantic University, and then ultimately working on my master's at Wayne State. I got to work in repertory theater, which is uncommon today because it's expensive. Rotating rep even more because you do a different play. Every performance is a different show, 5 plays in rotating rep. I cut my teeth on Shakespeare and working at the Hillberry Classic Theater in Detroit with a company of actors who came from all over the country on a fellowship, working in the classics. So I had legs under me. I learned if you do Shakespeare, you can do anything, and that's because there's language and you have to have good legs and good lungs, and you do 5 acts of Shakespeare, you can do anything.
All right.
Yeah. I am personally excited to have you join us today because I also, I basically write plays and then produce and direct them myself, although they're often 2-handers and 3-handers, and I work in a small venue. It's not even a black box, more like a black shoe box. But I do totally relate to the world of theater and the challenges of theater. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the fact that you have done Shakespeare, but then you toured with Brighton Beach Memoirs, which is Neil Simon, correct?
Correct.
So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the difference between those two jobs of work.
I think that we're always looking for the human being. So whether you're doing King Richard III or the father in Brighton Beach Memoirs, you're still a human being. With Shakespeare, you have the added complexity of great language, and you have to be able to say that verse and make it sound like a person speaking rather than a bad Shakespearean actor. With Neil Simon, the challenges are don't mess it up. Trust the line. Especially in Brighton Beach Memoirs, that's a real family going through real challenges. It's not about gags or punchlines. It's about how do you create the humanity of these people and their struggle to survive. The humor comes organically. The minute there's a great story about Lunt Fontaine, great actors, turn of the century, playing in New York on Broadway, and they were husband and wife, and they were doing a great comedy, and they were backstage after the show taking off their makeup, and he was fuming. Alfred Lunt was fuming. He said, I don't understand it. I don't understand. Act 2, Scene 3, I always got that laugh. When I asked for the tea, I always got that laugh. I don't know what happened. And his wife was taking off her makeup, and she said, my dear, she said, if you ask for the tea instead of the laugh, you get it. And that's the deal. Don't go for the laugh. Go for the human being and the circumstances they're in.
But agreed, right? The tempo of something like Brighton Beach Memoirs, it's a very different thing from the almost operatic moves of a Shakespeare piece.
But I don't think we're on the right path if we think about Shakespeare's operatic. And I don't think we're on the right path if we think tempo. The tempo is built into the text. With Shakespeare, when I'm working with young people today, the challenge is to get them to get to the end of the line, to be able to say that entire line without truncating it and capture the true meaning of what they're saying. But it's that way in everything. You need to be truthful to the text. I don't trivialize Neil Simon. I think he was a master in his day. And
oh no, we'll agree. We'll definitely agree on that. And further, I think that a lot of stage comedies are in their way their own cosmos of focus, challenge, concentration.
I think they're just different animals, but you're the same actor, and you're always looking for the humanity in your character. And you have to understand the text and honor it. And with Neil Simon, he writes almost perfect text. If you just don't adulterate it with pauses that shouldn't be there, or your own interpretation. And with Shakespeare, it's the same way. The language teaches you what's happening. In Shakespeare, there are almost no stage directions. They're superfluous. They find themselves in the performance.
Okay, you're on tour with Brighton Beach Memoirs.
For a year.
How many? Right.
Cities.
Do you know how many total performances you did?
I don't know. 78 cities in a year, and each city several performances. Sometimes one night stands. We traveled by bus.
Could you have possibly done it 500 times?
Sure.
Here's my question: how do you not, in the middle of it, this or even Shakespeare, think, boy, I would really like to have a hot sandwich after this is done tonight, and your mind just suddenly isn't with you?
That's just discipline and focus. Why would you not be in the world of the play? I know there are some actors who are thinking of other things while they're working, but those aren't actors I want to work with. Mm-hmm. Those are actors who are not honoring the script or the event. I think acting is the art and craft of acting. The craft is that you're there every night knowing that audience is entitled to the best performance you can give every time. Why would you do less than that? That's either innately in the actor or not,
Right.
It's a question of discipline and the focus of your energy. You're in it every night for the first time. It's never happened before. It will never happen again.
Would you compare it to dance in that way?
I'm not a very good dancer, so
Well, I was hoping maybe after we were done here, you and I could meet up somewhere. And
okay. I think not, but
okay.
Thanks for the offer. No, I think that every art form has its discipline. Dancers have a rigorous discipline and a short shelf life. Actors, we can do this till we drop, but the commitment is from within. And I think we need to be the kind of actor you want to work with, and that involves being present, utterly present. That's not to say we're not human beings. I remember in Detroit, I was working with Jeff Tambor. We were in the company together doing a French farce, Flea and Arrear. Guns going off, people running in and out of hotel rooms, infidelities and craziness, mayhem everywhere. And at one point, I'm leaping over railings and jumping into a room that's about this big and waiting. And Jeff comes running into the room, chasing somebody else. And we're in this tiny room, two grown men, face to face, looking at each other. And we both had the same thought. I could say, what the hell are we doing? This is madness. And we laughed, and then boom, the door opens and we're back in character. I mean, you're doing a play, but the discipline to stay in that play, to stay focused, that's up to you, but why would you cheat yourself and the audience?
Wow, that was great. I'm curious, Richard, whether all of this craft that you've started to describe for us results in a performance, right? Results in a thing that we in the audience look and we move into that world with you. Now, what I wonder is, does that reflect culture or does it shape culture? And given your obvious, sort of admiration for Shakespeare, do we have a modern day Shakespeare among us right now?
No. No, I think Jonathan Miller wrote a book called Subsequent Performances. And the idea is that plays are mutable. They change based on the world that they come from and are in. The plays in Shakespeare's day had a relevance to England and the people in those audiences that they don't have today to us. So if we reinterpret the plays and make them make sense today, that's okay. Then they're reflecting the culture that we're in today. But there's something universal about his characters that we can recognize, whether it's a period piece or whatever period it's placed in. There is a humanity that shines through these characters. And I think that I don't know if culture shapes the plays, but it certainly did for Chekhov. He was writing at the turn of the century when a revolution was about to take place. That's in his work. Can we relate to Russia in that period of time? Not really. But we can relate to human beings who are caught up in unrequited love, desires and passions to be somewhere they're not, the disappointments of life, and the joys. There are universal elements in great plays that continue forever.
Well, I think that there's some interest sometimes in revivals. It almost seems like someone's curiosity about how this thing will feel now. Maybe the revival of West Side Story, or Steven Spielberg making the movie of West Side Story, again, making another movie. Is that part of it, is to just sort of see how taking those things and putting them into the now causes us to reevaluate, either find them more valuable or forgive their whatever soft spots that they might have?
Well, a lot of Neil Simon, for instance, will not hold up today. Some of those jokes and some of the dynamics just aren't relevant today. But a play that was originally for television, that was made into a play, that was revived 20 years after it was originally done, 12 Angry Men, is very relevant today for different reasons. And the revival that the original one had Lee J. Cobb, George C. Scott did the one 20 years afterwards. William Friedkin directed that, actually. And they did change the dynamics of some of those people. And suddenly, instead of a young black boy, it was a Puerto Rican boy. And they introduced, I think, 4 black actors into the mix. And the dynamic changed, but the core was exactly the same. Can one person stand up against a multitude of opinion? Can we question the justice that's happening? And I think the OJ thing had happened just about the time that they did that. And so it was very relevant. And even today, this sense of pressure that certain politicians are under to conform, and people, acquiescing. And what happens to government and democracy when we yield to the majority opinion that may be wrong?
Personally, I'm a huge fan of Inherit the Wind. and would even like to try a revival of that if I could get the resources together to do that. But I find that it actually seems to roll closer to the present, the things that are going on in the present time. On the newspapers are gone, and all. We don't have to do that litany, but we know. And so it's sometimes I think the work is just plain timeless.
Good work is. And I think you're right about that, Clay.
Get into this acting teaching area, because I find it kind of fascinating, especially since we have so much of that activity out here in LA, and yet, of course, not everyone is going to hit, the Rubik. They're not going to hit a gold. They're not going to find the pot of gold in what they're pursuing. They may have a wonderful life.
Let me interrupt you. The pot
Yeah.
of gold is in the pursuit.
Yeah.
There is no brass ring. There is no ultimate arrival. I've worked with young actors who got a series and they were thrilled and bought a Porsche and got their house in Malibu and the show closed.
Yeah.
They were bereft. But it's a lifelong pursuit. It's not about. I know an actor who won the Academy Award and then laid down on his sofa and didn't get up for a year. He'd arrived. What else could he do? And the pressure to be better than that, enormous. Now, I think you have to look at it, acting as a lifetime pursuit, and the joy is in the work.
You teach in a university environment now, or you have, but we can get into that in a moment if you want to. But maybe getting more from a university background in some ways contributes to the overall roundness and fullness of the actor.
I agree entirely. I don't think you should take acting classes in college. You should take everything but the humanities, language. The more knowledge you have, the better actor you'll be. If you start specializing too fast, you're missing a lot of knowledge that can support you as an actor and as a human being. The students we have at the Art of Acting Studio have come, many of them from colleges. They've had that. They've also, some of them had some professional work as actors. But they come to commit to a company of actors for 2.5 years. And they study improv, they study script analysis. We do performances in Shakespeare and Chekhov and modern theater. But they've come already with knowledge and experience. I think that there's no substitute for that. And if you can get a well-rounded education, do it. It will only serve you and make you a more interesting human being and therefore a more interesting actor.
In terms of what you spoke about a few minutes ago about getting the internal part of it together, to what degree does audience matter? I do my plays in a 50-seat venue. 35 people is not a bad night for me. And the pieces work because they're meant to be experienced at an intimate distance. And so I don't ever fret that I'm not filling a 100-seat venue 4 times a week or whatever else it is I would be doing. Do you have thoughts about that? I'm not saying does the audience matter ? I'm saying the degree to which, I guess, the audience matters.
I don't know quite how to answer that. I will say that just a couple of years ago, I finally did King Lear, but I did it in our small studio, and it was a small, intimate setting, not unlike what you're describing. And it was incredibly powerful to do Shakespeare in an intimate setting. I've also worked in the New York Shakespeare Festival in the park, Central Park. And that's like working on a float in a parade. It's huge and presentational and not very intimate. I've worked with James Earl Jones several times, and his King Lear was not as good as he is because he was performing for a large audience and it became spectacle. And he was very conscious of his voice. And we lost the human being. So I actually prefer intimate settings so that you can see into the work in a deeper way. You know, Stanislavski's whole method, the reason it came about was a rebellion against representational acting. And every actor, I think, today is using some form of his method, consciously or not. He was concerned with the art of experiencing, not the art of representing. And the best actors today are doing just that. We had offshoots of his ideas from different teachers. Stella Adler, who was the queen of where I come from and where I'm teaching, studied personally with Stanislavski in Paris. And she got a very clear idea of what he was about. But Lee Strasberg went a totally different way, and they were at loggerheads for years, always. He was more concerned with emotional memory. And he had actors convoluted in fetal positions, screaming and going through all kinds of indulgence that had nothing to do with acting, really. And yet he's got acolytes that revered him, Al Pacino, and a whole bunch of wonderful actors. But Lee went a different way, and I'm more aligned with what Stella's interpretation of method work was. It's about pursuing your actions, not indulging in your emotions. You don't need to remember the death of your grandmother to have an emotional moment in the play. The play is enough. It's in the text. The minute you have to go away from the text to dredge up emotions from your past and memory, you're not present.
Would it possibly be your speculation that some people who are attracted to that sort of thing are trying to work on other things in their life?
Yeah, therapy is one thing and theater is another. You may have breakthroughs and emotional catharsis, but that's not what you're here for as an actor. You're here to give a performance, not take one. It's not about what's it going to do for me. It's great if you have that wonderful experience, but we're doing it for an audience. And that's what we have to keep in mind. It's not about how can I get off on it, There's a whole mystique about acting that we have the craft and then we have the art. And there are brilliant craftsmen who are not feeling anything, but they can present a character that looks like he's going through something. Laurence Olivier was one of those brilliant actors who was a technician. And there's this story about him doing Othello. One night, suddenly the performance caught fire, and the stage manager's on the phone during the show calling people in, get down to the theater. You've got to see what Larry is doing. He's brilliant tonight. And people rushed to the theater, and he was brilliant. And then they ran backstage afterwards and knocked on his dressing room door, and they could hear him. He'd locked the door. He was throwing things against the wall, smashing the mirror and carrying on. And they burst into him. And Larry, what's wrong? What's wrong? You were brilliant tonight. And he says, I know. And it's tears running down his face. He says, I know. He said, I don't know why. I think that sometimes we catch fire, and if the circumstances are right, you get to go to that incredible place where, you're transported. We're conduits. We don't originate it. And hopefully we don't adulterate it either. We just pass it through us and into the audience. That's our job. We're here to serve that. And, I've worked with a lot of egos, and I've worked with some wonderful actors. And those actors who are in it for themselves, for their own aggrandizement, are missing the spiritual component of what we do. I know we're not bringing penicillin to the world. I know that. But we're moving people towards their humanity. And that's a pretty terrific thing.
It's a little bit religious as you start.
It's spiritual. I don't know if
it's spiritual. Okay, that's much better. Yeah.
Wow. So, Richard, as you know, it's no longer possible to have a conversation more than a few minutes long without the topic of artificial intelligence coming up. Now, studios are asking actors to agree to the creation of digital replicas. what do you think this means for the future of acting? And what I want to know from you is, do you think AI could ever replicate the sort of techniques and training that you've been discussing, that you were just describing? And are there some actors or roles that AI could replicate? So, for example, would an artificial intelligence replica of Jason Statham be quite okay, but an AI Benicio del Toro be a disaster?
You know, I don't want to imply that Jason can be replaced easily because he's just a martial arts expert. I don't
What about Mark? What about Mark and I? Do you think a couple of rubbery AI baby dolls would? Okay.
Do you even think we're real?
My feeling is, I don't know where that's going, and it's a little scary to me, because I think elements like emotional intelligence, intuition, imagination, empathy, personal connection that way, I don't think you can replicate that. I think you have to experience it. And I think that there's something so wonderfully atavistic and primitive about acting in the live setting with human beings in the audience and you on stage. It takes us way back to origin. And I think that's how we find ourselves. I think that's what people ultimately come to the theater for. They want to remember who they are, why they're here. We're not here to distract people. We're here to do just the opposite. We're here to remind them of what it is to be a human being. And that's a pretty terrific thing, I think.
Is there at any point for you, anyhow, maybe not in the thing itself inherently, but for you, is there any level to it where it is a little bit magical?
It was a recent production on Broadway of Good Night and Good Luck.
Yes.
The revival with George Clooney. And the ticket prices were outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
My son-in-law was in that production, had a fairly nice role in it. So I got inside information about that. And then they did a wonderful thing. They actually filmed it and showed it on CNN. So people did get a chance to see it. But yes, people went to see George Clooney. People went to see the magic of a star and a celebrity. And that happens all the time on Broadway. Wonderful actors are replaced by celebrities. But in the end, the thing that worked about that production, I think, the thing that resonated, because it is very timely right now, the elements of McCarthyism and what went on in terms of repression. And Clooney at one point, actually in the script, quotes Shakespeare. He quotes Cassius in Julius Caesar. And he turns to the audience and he said, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves." And it resonated. It went through the audience. And suddenly, this wasn't about George Clooney's celebrity. This was about, they felt it. They felt their sense of responsibility for where we're at right now in the world. I think it's always been about that. I think from Oedipus, Sophocles, it's about taking responsibility for finding the truth and owning that, no matter what the consequences are. And so any play that connects to that, whether it's got a celebrity in the star lead or not, that's going to resonate with an audience. And there is a magic to the Broadway stage. I've felt it, been on it, and been in the audience. I know what that means. But it's the same magic in any theater, because you're having the sense of tribal communion. And as I say, we come to the theater to find out who we are, I think, ultimately. And, you know, those two faces of comedy and tragedy is the same face. It's about catharsis. It's catharsis is a cleansing. We come to get clear of all the bullshit of our lives and get back down to who are we really and why are we here and what do we want to do with our lives and what price are you going to pay for what you say you want? All the deep, big questions. They're sometimes hidden in a sugar-coated farce, but they're there if you look deep enough.
I agree. And I think that in some ways there will always be, man, even if there's just something happens and there's just campfires at night, no television and
That's where it
internet.
began. Right,
Yeah,
right.
then somebody is going to go, well, tonight, he's going to wear a robe and pretend to be, and it's all going to start again.
Look, the first guy who did this was Thespis. That's what, 5th century BC.
Mm-hmm.
He had the balls to step out from the group, the chorus, and speak as a man in a singular way. And it was shocking. He was risking his life to do that. This was a religious ceremony, theater in 5th century Greece.
Right.
But suddenly he got the idea that really what matters is what we as a single human being do and take responsibility for what we do. And he's the first one who created tragedy. He created the masks, which were the different roles, and everything in theater today goes back to that period of time when one person had the audacity to step out and into something that was really personal. And that's the thing, when we circle back to the original question you asked, whether it's Shakespeare or Neil Simon, it's personal. And when it stops being personal, when it stops being intimate, I'm no longer interested.
Right.
How do you feel about if I were to put forth this hypothesis that the thing that really makes us human is that we are storytelling animals, that's the unique trait. It's not that we use tools. There's birds and other animals that use tools. It's not that we have emotions. There's other animals have emotions, but this notion of being able to tell stories and what we can transmit to each other through stories, what we can learn about others and about ourselves through stories. How do you feel about if I were to say that's what makes us human, that is the essential element of humanity? Am I going too far?
Well, I don't know if that's what makes us human, but I think as human beings, we're always deeply aware that we don't really know where we came from, and we don't really know what's up ahead. And I think the storytelling is about origin. It's about finding our way. I think there are times in a great performance where it's like we're wandering around on this barren, dark landscape, and we don't know where we are. And then suddenly there's this flash of chain lightning across the sky, and it illuminates everything. And we see suddenly, for the first time, this is where we are. This is who we are. I get it. And then the lightning's gone, and people tend to forget. But they yearn for that revelation, that illumination. That's why the stage is lit and the audience is in darkness. That's a metaphor for what's really going on. And we're always looking to these stories to find our origin, to find our meaning. So that never goes away. That's profoundly human and resonates. That's why the theater will never die.
I love that.
That's kind of a good note to get to our feature that we try to have on the show here, which is that we try to bring forward a revolutionary old idea, something that's from then that is coming back right now and could be helpful in the now. And we have that now. And with your kind indulgence, Mr. Green, we'll just talk just a moment about that so that we have that and be interested in your ideas on this as well.
I can't imagine what's about to happen. I'm just
Are you on tenterhooks?
I'm on something. I think it's a chair, but
Okay, so Richard, this is time for a revolutionary old idea. And every episode, we like to do a version, our take on a current event. And we like to showcase someone who is actually literally got a revolutionary old idea. It's typically some creative method or some approach that we would think is outdated you'd think is maybe way outdated, completely obsolete, but is now being reimagined in a fresh way. So what do you have for us this week, Steve?
Well, today on A Revolutionary Old Idea, we are hearkening back to a device that I think a lot of people thought they were done with. They probably still have one lurking around their house or their garage. Maybe one is in the closet from when Granddad was staying that 1 week that he was fighting with Grandma, and then he forgot to take it back with him. It's the typewriter. Anybody remember those? The typewriter.
Now, Steve, I should caution you that many of our listeners may never have actually laid eyes on a typewriter. So let's help them imagine a mechanical device that functions in some ways like a word processor, but you have to do all the processing in your own head.
On the Learn Graphic Design blog on LinkedIn, there is a British artist named James Cook who is using antique typewriters to craft beautifully detailed drawings. He has carefully chosen letters and characters on the keyboard to create precision works of art. Some of his pieces contain over 500,000 typed characters, and they take weeks to complete. So that's what he's doing downstairs in the rec room, if anybody is out there looking for him. But these are really breathtaking.
So I think maybe this goes to show that that great design isn't always about the latest technology, but rather vision and technique.
Well, I think so. And some would say it's not the tool, it's how you use it. Now, I can't tell you exactly the name of the film where I heard that, but needless to say, it was in a very bad part of the city. It's not the tool, it's about how you use it.
Let's assume that we should never underestimate old tools in the hands of a fresh mindset.
This isn't getting better. This isn't getting better, okay? Let's shift here.
I think it's wonderful that somebody came up with this imaginative, creative use of an old tool. I look at the actors I'm teaching now, and if I ask them to come in with pen and paper, take notes, or write an essay, I cannot, it's illegible. There is no use of the pen any longer. It's a tool, much like the typewriter, that's becoming obsolete for this next generation. And it's unfortunate because there's something about writing by hand that requires contemplative thinking. It's not instantaneous. There's a thought process. And if you read, for instance, the old letters that John Adams wrote to his wife, Abigail, they're eloquent and they're beautifully written. There's an art form to them.
Yeah, it is very different. Writing by hand is different than even using a keyboard. And in fact, I've just seen some really interesting research on the ability of people to remember things, and handwritten note-taking results in a better memorization than even just like in real time entering it on a keyboard. So there is definitely something about the old tools.
If you were writing a letter that you knew would not be delivered for 2 months, you took your time with it, you know? Mm-hmm. That kind of time and the sense of taking time to do that is being lost. I feel the same way about reading a book. I love holding the book in my hand. I love turning the pages. This is getting lost with these electronic readers that I know are convenient. You can take them to the beach, but there's something wonderfully sensual about turning a page and absorbing the paper and the book. Old-fashioned, old school, but there is a value to it, and I see it.
Well, this is something I wanted to kind of try to get back to as we were talking about audiences. Sometimes there's I get just a feeling, that I think that somehow a certain mental lassitude is setting in on audiences, TV, theater, film, and it isn't so much, I don't think, some content these days in all areas, in all forms, in all formats, is as sharp and challenging as anything we've ever had. But somehow, when I see like a huge response to the most simplistic, dopey pop phenomena, I think maybe something's going on. Any
But why do you
experience on your part?
let me ask you something. Why do you think we have all these superhero films right now? There seems to be a glut of them on the market. I think it has to do with the fact that we feel powerless and we're looking for people with superhuman powers to save us. It's a lot like the golem. It's we want to be rescued. We want to believe that there's a powerful force for good that's going to somehow swoop in and save humanity. It's coming out of fear, I think, and a longing for potency that people don't feel they have. There's a lot of despair right now in our culture. People feeling that they have no power to change what's happening. We cannot give that up. And we cannot imagine somebody's going to rescue us. The fault, dear Brutus.
Richard, what role does experience play in your craft? And you can answer in the sense that your craft could be acting, it could be directing, it could be teaching. But let's talk about the role of experience.
You mean life experience?
Yeah.
I was in a production of Lear when I was in my 20s, playing Gloucester, this old character. But it wasn't until I was in my 70s playing Lear that I felt I could fulfill the depth and nuance of that role. The challenge with Lear, Olivier faced this, is that when you have the vigor to do the performance, 5 acts of Shakespeare, going through that, incredible physical challenge that he has, screaming on the heath, and it's a young man's vigor. By the time you're old enough to play it, you may be too feeble, as Olivier was. I was lucky enough to play it while I still had some energy and could fulfill it, but I wasn't ready to understand the depth of that role till I was in my 70s. And the things I can bring to it with age and experience are, I think, what Shakespeare needed. Now, Richard Burbage, the actor he wrote it for, was a lot younger, but the brilliance of the writing is that he captured the wisdom and experience of an older man, a foolish older man. But okay. I'll tell you this, the first assignment I give to my class is to come in with a monologue from a role that they would never be cast in. Mm-hmm. So they wind up playing opposite genders, characters that are well beyond them in years and age. And the purpose of this is to say that you can imagine, if you use the magic Stanislavski, if you can imagine yourself in any human being, there are no limits. Actors who only play one character time and time and time again are really not experiencing the range that's possible. So I try to bring my actors to a place of the child mind, the innocence of that, so that all roles are possible. Why limit your imagination? I think we have intuitively an understanding of all human beings. And yes, age and experience gives you a quality and a depth and a nuance that you could not have when you're in your teens. I do monologues today in the shower sometimes. And I think, God, I did this in my 20s, but now I get it. Now I understand, And maybe I was good in my 20s, but it didn't resonate the way it does now. So age and experience are invaluable, but your imagination is the tool that makes all things possible. So why limit it?
Agreed.
Richard, are there things that you're better at now just on the strength of all of your experience and the life experience that you bring to your job today?
I don't know if it was Michelangelo or, I think it was. Somebody saw a piece of sculpture that he did, and they said, how did you see that form in a block of granite? How did you know that form was there? And he said, I just took away everything that wasn't necessary. And I think that as I've aged, I've learned to take away what isn't necessary. I think I've come to a simplicity that I was unaware of in my youth. And I think that if anything, my work has gotten cleaner and more focused because of that. And it has to do with trust. Trust that it's there. It will be seen.
Wow. I love it. Richard, speaking as someone who's not an actor, I can imagine some, and I have actually written some scripts, screenplays, and stage plays. So I understand the idea of giving an actor lines. I understand the idea of providing some stage direction. But talk to me about the creative aspect that the actor brings to this.
Well, we talk about the art and the craft. The art of acting, the craft of acting. Learning the lines, memorizing, intuitively finding your blocking, and it should be organic. It should come out of a need. That's the craft. Knowing that if I step on that line, it'll kill that laugh. Knowing just the basic craft of acting. But then the aspect of the art of acting is something else. It's mystical. It involves a commitment that is, I think, spiritual. But to me, it's like the DNA strand. It's interwoven. And the really fine actor has a craft. It's not accidental. Brilliant acting is not accidental. So you have the craft of acting wedded with the art of acting. And I think those two things are inseparable in fine acting.
Well, let me ask you just some quick, sort of to the point, sort of fast yes or no. We'll call this the lightning round and see if it takes. And you don't have to feel like you have to give us a whole thing. You can just say yes, no, or not at all.
Be brief, you're saying. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Which for you is more enjoyable, live theater or TV and film acting?
No comparison. The actor lives on a stage. You have full responsibility.
Have you ever had to work with a diva or whatever a male diva is?
Many times. Sometimes you work around actors, sometimes you work with them.
An actor you worked with where you felt you really learned a lot?
Oh, John Carradine, old John Carradine. When I was in my 20s, I got to do The Emperor's New Clothes with him, a film. And he took me under his wing and he would teach me about Shakespeare. He taught me how to make a crepe beard. You know, he was a great Shakespearean actor who unfortunately did a lot of grade B movies and got known for horror films. But he was a brilliant Shakespearean actor and a man of the theater.
Yes,
Yeah,
people say he, even though he became somewhat better known for doing kind of spooky
horror movies.
Guys on the Edge, right?
Yeah.
He was actually had great breath.
He was in these great films, Captain Courageous, Grapes of Wrath. He worked with John Ford. I mean, he had a rich history in film and theater. Yeah.
Okay. Newt, next question. Has anybody ever skipped an entire page of the script while you were in a live performance? I mean, suddenly they're on page 16 and we're really supposed to be doing 14.
You know, every once in a while you'll see it, like the Roadrunner eyes, you know, you'll see an actor go up and be lost and you say, oh God, where are we? How do we get back? Yeah.
Right.
These things happen. We're human beings, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but you find a way to be creative and work through it. There's a great story. I know you don't want me to go on and on, but the two actors on stage and the phone rings and it shouldn't be ringing. And the actors look at each other like, what the hell? And one actor goes over to the phone and he picks it up. And he says, hello, it's for you. And he, you know, I mean, the way you handle that is up to you. But
yeah,
that's the element of live theater. You know, nobody's going to fix it in editing.
Right. And it's not wrong for the audience until they know.
I observed a show once where actors suddenly started laughing, cracked up. And the audience loved it because they thought, oh, they're so vulnerable. It's so sweet. But it happened 2 more times in the show, and the audience turned on them because they realized it was corrupt. They were doing it for a laugh. When it happens, it's a human thing. But if you build that into a show, the audience will hate you.
You just did a very nice thing there for John Carradine, who maybe other than little web programs like this is not heralded as anywhere near as much as he should be. The person you were most influenced by, and I did hear earlier today that your mentor was the very good character actor, and now I'm not remembering the
Pat
name.
Hingle.
Pat Hingle, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
we did in Buffalo. I did a production of Death of a Salesman. Pat was Willie Loman, and I was Biff.
Yeah, you'd be great in that.
I had hair then, so it worked. But he was wonderful to work with and wonderful to be around. You know, I lament that young actors today do not have elders to learn from. I was fortunate to have people like John Carradine and James Earl Jones and wonderful old actors. Yeah. And they kind of took me under the wing and said, this is what my life was like, you know, and I pass this on to you. And it's one of the reasons I'm teaching now, to pass on this to others. I have more satisfaction teaching now than being in another episodic television show. It's more meaningful to ignite others, you know, and pass it on.
Yes, that's again the spiritual dimension.
Yeah.
Have you ever been involved with anything, and you don't have to say what it is, and we are not going to produce any photographs or anything? Ever been in a role you basically regretted?
Never.
Okay.
Never. But I will tell you another little story. I did a play called Lunch Hour with Sybil Shepherd and James MacArthur. We toured in the upper New England area, summer stock kind of situation. And there's a story about Mike Nichols directing this on Broadway, and was one of the final previews. And he was watching the production on stage, and he's quoted as saying, "Oh God, get me through this, and I promise I'll never do shit again." Well, I had a great time with that show because we were touring, and you know, every character is real to me, and it's a thrill to just be on stage, and the opportunity is a privilege.
What aspect of all the things you do are you most either satisfied or proud of? Actor, director, teacher?
Well, now it's teaching. Now I'm fulfilled and satisfied by doing that. But you know, there's an extraordinary thing that happens when you get a great role and the opportunity and a good company to work in. There's nothing like it. Nothing like it. It's thrilling to ignite an audience, to transform and transport an audience. And that's a privilege. But my life now is devoted to teaching and inspiring others. And it's a privilege.
Excellent.
A piece of advice for an aspiring actor. If you had just, as somebody's leaving the elevator and you want to give them one piece of advice.
Well, the piece of advice Betty Davis gave when they said, well, a young aspiring actor coming to Hollywood, what would you tell them? And she said, take Fountain, meaning take this road. It's faster than all the other roads. I think that there's no one piece of advice, you know. I try to realign young actors to say, don't go for the series. That's not where your life is. You know, your life is a process, and this is a thing that you'll get better at all your life. So see it as for the long haul. And it's not a brass ring you win, you know. It's a way of life.
Well, Mr. H. Richard Green, you have added a patina of class to our little project here that we will long thank you for and enjoy. In addition, thank you for a very, very stimulating session with you, where I really, for me, it was really terrific. Thank you so much for
My
coming
pleasure.
to Revolutionary Old Idea.
Thank you for having me.
I want to say thanks as well. Your passion comes through so strongly. Tell us, are you performing at all? Do you have anything coming up?
Anything to plug?
No.
Do you have anything to plug, sir?
Just teaching at the Art of Acting Studio and having a great time. Because
Okay, and
I'm
that phone
working
number
with-
again?
No, it's about working with people who are committed. So whether it's the theater or anything, when you feel people are devoted, they're doing something out of love and passion, then all things are possible.
Well, that's brilliant. And to our audience, I'll just say thanks for joining us for another episode of A Revolutionary Old Idea. I'm Mark Gardner.
I'm Steve Stunich.